Where's Earth?
You should know.
It's not our system.
That's right. We're watching discussing Alien from 1939, Ridley Scott's landmark sci-fi horror film that has spawned several sequels, a couple prequels, a lot of books, a lot of comic books / graphic novels, a potential TV series. I think that actually, and several video games. This is where it starts. In some ways, this movie is two stories put together. Dan O'Bannon and some of the other writers originally came up with, had written about a crew finding a creature that they were not able to deal with. Dan O'Bannon had done something similar several years prior to this with John Carpenter in the film Dark Star, except that was not so serious. This film is quite serious in some ways. Maybe Dark Star was meant to be more serious than it was taken to be, but I digress. There is another element to this film which was added by some of the people I believe the studio hired. This is all going by things from the commentary on the films, from the film's DVD, where the character Ash and the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, their involvement in all this was not part of the original story. So we kind of have two stories that are kind of coming together here and that have morphed into something disgustingly beautiful in some ways, and relevant not just to the world in the 1970s or in the 1980s when the sequels comes out, or when Alien 3 comes out in the early 90s, or Alien Resurrection in the late 90s, or Prometheus in 2012, or Alien Covenant in 2017, or the one that came out last year, Alien Romulus. That's timeless in some ways. It's effective, at least. So let's get into this. There was no point I told you to watch up to for this point, because when we did this in class, it was simply, hey, here's look at the trailer and here's some questions to answer. So we're just going to run through that. So don't expect many clips here this time. That will definitely change in parts 2 and 3. If you need a way of seeing the movie, you do not need to see my Facebook. I meant to check that before doing this. You can catch Alien on YouTube, Google Play, Apple TV, Fandango, Amazon Prime, and of course Hulu, because this is a Disney-owned franchise since it came from 20th Century Fox. Since 20th Century Fox distributed it and had the rights to it, and Disney owns 20th Century Fox, not to confuse with Fox. So yeah, two separate companies with similar names. I might watch this video during my lunch break later on, or at least part of it. It's about as long as the movie, so a bit less, not as long as the movie, about a good chunk lengthwise. Alright, so first thing to do here was watch the trailer. After doing so, please tell me your initial impressions. I'm going to rewatch this trailer. I haven't watched it for a while, so yeah. Let's see what we got. So we're seeing what looks like the surface of the LV-426 while the letters form for the title Alien, as they do in the opening credits. Wonderful, wonderful design choice there. Just have the letters slowly form. Oh, that's an egg. That looks like an egg. So, I think I forgot to turn the sound on for this, so you're probably not hearing it outside my mic. There's just this constant, like, howling in the background. So, no music, just this. And there's LV-420 in space. No one can hear you scream. Again, no one vocalized that. I just wrote it myself. All right. That trailer is still intense. It just like builds itself up. That is nuts. And no, it's not even 2 minutes long. Are they showing a lot of what's happening in the movie? Yes, but we have no context for it. So, yeah. So my impressions are that way too many things open here. My initial impressions are that this movie is potentially going to be fast-paced. There's like a lot of running going on. Maybe there might be some violence, and there's definitely some weird stuff going on. Oh, and there's a cat. There's a cat. Definitely, there's a cat. Okay, again, this is a. Sarcasm such as this is a really good trailer. It really is. If you want to hear what the sound sucks, I don't think I have the system sounds on my screen capturing software. Make sure to rewatch. Go to YouTube and watch that. And in future trailers, I'll make sure to have the Calcapture to capture the system sounds. You have been randomly assigned a character. You can find them on the bottom of the assignment along with the description of their duties on ship. You will follow this character throughout the film. Your character is, well, I don't have an assigned character, but I'll tell you who the characters were and what they did, or what they were supposed to be doing. The reason I did this, and I talked about this in Evil End of the Sun, we're going to do this again in Bullet Train, we're going to do this in Knives Out, way down the road in the last set of videos. We're going to, we did this somewhat in Last Sheila. Having someone to follow helps, I think, keep track of, one, who certain characters are, but two, it helps you just pay more attention and focus more on what's going on. Because I know it's easy to sit there and listen to a film while texting or doing whatever. I get it. Trust me, I've been there. When you need to actually follow someone around and see what they're doing, what they're saying, it gives you more incentive to watch, I think. So I like doing that. I started doing that years ago with Clue. I was using that at the end of the semester, like, yeah, here's some pieces of paper, pull it out, here's who you're following. And then so when I can do that in the movie, I try to. I don't do it for everything, of course, because it's not as effective in everything, but this movie, it worked. So, we have Dallas. Dallas is the captain of the ship. He's played by Tom Skerritt. He's the guy with the beard, essentially. There is Parker. Parker's the I don't know if the actor's supposed to be African American. The character's supposed to be African American. I don't remember if the actor is African American or not. I'm gonna look that up quickly. I'm just on my phone. Yeah, he was so African American. He's the lone African American on the ship. He has some facial hair too. He is the chief engineer. His job is to make sure things run down in the Bull, the Nostromo, correctly. I know the Nostromo is a slightly weird ship because it's a towing vessel. We'll talk about that in a bit. It's not like Star Trek where there's like a dedicated engineering area with a warp core and things like that on the Enterprise and Scotty. But yeah, so Parker's the chief engineer. Brett, who usually has a hat on all the time, some of these people do, but Brett usually wore the kind of Hawaiian shirts and stuff. He's played by the late Harry Dean Stanton. Matthew Buckcock has also passed away. That Brett is his assistant, essentially. He's the one that always replies everything with right. They have that discussion at some point. there is Ash. Ash is the science/medical officer, and he was put on board this ship right before they left Earth, or wherever they left from. So yeah, this is the first time Dallas and Ash have worked together. I did not make a clip of that, and I probably should have, because it didn't occur to me until I was talking about this. Ash will be important later. There is Lambert. Lambert is the, I don't want to say blonde, but the lady with the shorter hair on the ship. She is, what's her job? Give me a moment here. Lambert was the navigation officer. I should have remembered that because, that's a clip at the right beginning of the film. She's like, hey, where's Earth? So she's like, wait, something's off here. So her job is to make sure that, the Nostromo is getting to and from where it needs to go, essentially through the vast depths of space. Who else do we have? I'm not running through some order. Okay, we have Jones. Jones/Jonesy is the cat. I guess his job is to just fend off, to protect the crew and get rid of any space vermin that are wandering around the ship, and to just help be an emotional support animal, I guess, if that's possible for a cat to be. Probably is. There's Kane. So Kane is the essentially the second in command. What was Kane's job? I have these down somewhere, but it has the students' names next to them, so I don't want to do that. Kane Engineer, that's what I want. Kane Alien. Gilbert Kane was his first name. Executive officer, so he's essentially the second in command on the ship. And then, I keep clicking on that, have it. I'm going to go back to editing. Then we have Ripley. Okay, so Kane was played by the late John Hurt. Then Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, in the film that put her on this film put her on the map. And incidentally, Dan O'Bannon and some of the others had mentioned that when they initially wrote the screenplay for this, they didn't have genders assigned to any character, but they always assumed Ripley would be played by a male. So for Ridley Scott and the casting crew decided to use a woman instead for this, a female. It was very interesting. And now, females do tend to be leads a lot more in horror films. They tend to survive more than the males do. So maybe that had something to do with it, whether consciously or subconsciously. This came out about a year after Halloween did. So, and 19 years after Psycho. There's some other stuff in between there too, but in terms of there's something out there just trying to kill people, this was kind of picking a continuum up where Halloween had kind of left off just in space and with something that's even more enigmatic in some ways than Michael Myers, because Michael Myers has a history. At this point, we don't have a history with the alien. It's just there. Anyway, so Ripley is the warrant officer. Looking that up, essentially, her job is to make sure procedure, things like that, and make sure everything's running the way it should. She is in charge when Kane and Dallas are not on the ship, as she makes clear to Ash at some point. Again, a clip I didn't make, but probably could have. All right, so whoever they were following, there was those 8. I know it was ridiculous putting the cat in there, but it made more sense. I think that the number of students in the class had 8 characters instead of 7. So your characters work for the Weyland-Yutani Corporation on the commercial hull of Nostromo. Think of it as a space truck from Deep Purple starts playing in my mind, with ore refining capabilities. In other words, this thing goes around and finds ore on planets and refines it. It's got a refinery on board, maybe 4 of them or so. If you remember the ship, how it's that central unit, and then it has those 4 things on the sides. How do you think your character's job equates with the ship? That's going to vary from person to person. I'm not going to spend too much time with that. You can use your imagination. Have you ever found yourself trapped in a bad contract? If so, what did you do? I have found myself trapped in what I thought was a bad contract. I'm pretty sure it still was. I fulfilled that contract, and I was not offered another contract. And to be honest, had I been, I don't know if I would have taken it because I was done with the place before I even got started. It was not a good fit for me. So yeah, I saw the contract through because it was the right thing to do. But there were a lot of problems before things got started, and it just snowballed from there. Again, I was not a good fit for the place. It happens. And maybe today I'd be more mature and be able to handle things better, but I don't know. How do you think the crew will encounter the alien, and how many characters do you think will survive? Alright, so again, this is hard to talk about because I already know what's going to happen, and most of you probably watching this know too. And again, if you haven't, watch the film after this part of the discussion, of course. So going by the trailer, I think they're going to find an egg just sitting there, and it's going to open up, and then as we start to open up with that piercing light coming through it, and that's going to be the alien. Or maybe the egg's just going to nothing's going to come out of the egg, and they're just going to roll them around. How many do you think will survive? I think everyone will survive but the cat. That's what I think will happen. Yeah. Okay. Do not take those as bet. Do not take what I just said seriously, because that's not what's going to happen. At least about how many people will survive. That's how many I think will survive. Because here's the thing. This would be essentially the second horror film I ever saw, the first being The Terminator. And you're like, well, Mr. Flash, that's a sci-fi action. It is, but it has a lot of horror elements to it. So I consider The Terminator more of a horror film, to be honest, than a science fiction film. But this was the second one I saw, and I didn't appreciate it as much. And it wasn't until years later when I actually watched through it in a uncensored format. I was 12 or 13. It was probably 11 or 12 when I first saw this, and it didn't take off of USA or some other cable channel, so it had been edited and censored. It wasn't until I actually watched it from beginning to end in 2013, I think it was. Yeah, 2013. That I really appreciated it. And I'm being kind of facetious with some of what I'm saying here about what's going to happen, because I know already. And I'm sure some of you do too. Okay. For next time, watch up to an hour 15:48. I will tell you this, you might just want to watch the whole film, because some of what we talk about might kind of spoil the second half of the film. We're essentially going to watch up through to when Dallas disappears. Essentially when you see the alien come doing jazz hands. We'll take a look at that later. Yeah. Right. See you all then. Goodbye.
How long before it's functional?
What? It's 17 hours, fella.
At least 25 hours.